This week on Vice, we return to North Korea.
The worst case scenario would be the return to preemptive attacks.
So the big news here, and today they did not trot out the ICBM technology, the big missiles that can reach the continental U.S.
And then, the grim reality of climate change in California.
50 to 60 mile per hour winds pushing this fire right off the get-go.
I heard 80 football fields in a minute. You cannot run that.
Fires are going later and are burning more intense. And something's happening that's a little different.
Holy shit.
Effective right now. It's time to change.
Vice has been covering North Korea for years. In fact, some of my first reporting on camera was from inside the famously reclusive country.
I lay a wreath at the statue of Kim Il-sung. We have to do this as a token of respect.
We've been on many government-sanctioned tours, seen military parades, master gymnastics, assorted government propaganda, along with libraries, palaces, and even their film studios. We've reported from both sides of the DMZ, the southern side of which I'm standing on right now. We've covered North Korea's impact outside its borders. We've met those who have left the country and seen them struggle to adjust to the world outside. We've even visited North Korean labor camps in the forests of Siberia. But probably our most memorable North Korea story was our visit inside with Dennis Rodman and the Harlem Globetrotters, which Marshal Kim Jong-un himself attended. Now, all of this time, the one thing that has remained constant was the 70-year-long, fiercely adversarial relationship between North Korea and the United States and its allies.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil.
But now, finally, and quite frankly surprisingly, that appears to be changing.
We're here in Kim Il-sung Square. You can hear a pin drop. Everyone's waiting for the marshal to arrive. Meanwhile, there's about 200,000 military people here. The armies are arrayed. There's a lot of people watching this globally because of tensions between America and DPRK, and then the seeming détente in Singapore. We're just waiting to see which missiles they're actually going to parade out. Are they going to go on a peaceful stance and not show new missiles, or are they going to say, hey, we have new ICBM missile technology that can reach America, which thereby sends a message.
Just came by, now the people are coming by. So the big news here, and today they did not trot out the ICBM technology, they did not trot out the so-called big boys, the big missiles that can reach the continental U.S. So I think it's sending a message that they want to negotiate to a lot of people watching in Beijing, a lot of people watching in Washington, that, okay, it seems to be like we're willing to talk.
Now, it wasn't just the absence of ICBMs that sent the message. In a sign of improved relationships with China, the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping sent his right-hand man, Li Zhanshu, to attend the celebration. Now, when it comes to North Korea, these kinds of political signals have huge significance. Why? Well, because the DPRK has been forced to communicate in different ways due to its being considered a pariah state. For decades, it's been almost universally condemned for its serious human rights abuses, but especially for its consistent, aggressive, and frequent nuclear saber-rattling. In the summer of 2017, relations with the U.S. seemed to reach a new low, with President Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un trading insults that seemingly threatened all-out war.
Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself.
The North Korean leader reacted, calling him a dotard.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
Then suddenly, and very surprisingly, everything changed. At a hastily organized summit in Singapore, President Trump met with Kim Jong-un, the first time a sitting president has ever met a North Korean leader, and reaffirmed an agreement to denuclearize the Korean peninsula.
I was really being tough, and so was he. And we would go back and forth, and then we fell in love.
Now, on top of this landmark agreement, North and South Korea began a series of bilateral summits that have, in a show of good faith, demined part of the DMZ, taken down guard towers, and even symbolically shaken hands across the border. Now, this was not only unthinkable a few months earlier, but is perhaps the most remarkable moment in the history of the two countries since the cessation of violence 70 years ago. We wanted to go to Pyongyang for ourselves to see if North Korea was really ready to come in from the proverbial cold. There's still only one way to travel in North Korea, and that's on a tightly scheduled, government-sanctioned tour.
We're here in Pyongyang to see the 70th anniversary of statehood, so we're going to go through the process of seeing various things. This, for example, is a recreation of the birthplace of Kim Il-sung, the eternal president of the DPRK.
This tradition has been inherited through generations, and now it is being inherited by a respected supreme leader, Comrade Kim Jong-un. So inside, when you look around, don't touch anything and don't step on the floors, okay? Let's go inside.
Now, North Korea may indeed be looking towards its future, but remain obsessed with their past, as evidenced by this politically charged and honestly quite odd homage to its current and never-ending president, the long-deceased Kim Il-sung.
So this is the magical well that Kim Il-sung, the eternal president, used. See if it's magic. I wish to be happy. Good. No, you don't put it back. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I did a bad thing. I put my own water into the magic water. What started with the best intentions ended poorly.
More than ever, the North Koreans were keen to put their economy front and center and show us how it's supposedly thriving despite sanctions. They took us for an inside look at a silk factory in downtown Pyongyang. Now, while the North Koreans' intention was to show us the great working conditions here at the factory, we couldn't help but notice that everything from the workers' lifestyles to their quarters remained heavily controlled.
Where do the families live?
Oh, this dormitory is for the girls. Girls, virgins who does not marry.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
not married.
But all we had to do was scratch the surface a little bit to see that these ideal working conditions for the quote-unquote virgins were actually quite heavily regulated.
So, beer and salted meat, bad.
May cause cancer. It is may cause cancer.
No, I don't like that. Rabbit and orange is bad. Beer and hairy crab is bad. That's a bummer. Pear and chickens are not good. Well, I'm not going to eat pear and chickens anytime soon. What are all these posters of military missiles and weapons?
Our great leader, General Kim Jong-il, make our country as a military power. And that picture shows our military force.
Right. And so this is a silk weaving dormitory. So would posters like this be at every dormitory? Most dormitories would have like a military power.
I'm not sure, but anyhow, this poster represents our weavers, weavers' pride and dignity. Yeah, so.
If you guys unify, which everybody says you want to unify North and South Korea, then this won't be so important because the military is not so important if you're not at war. Okay.
If the U.S. ensure our security and withdraw the hostile anti-DPRK policy, yes, at that time, maybe military force, maybe at the time.
The North Koreans wanted to dispel any idea of food shortages and to show us their self-reliance. So we left Pyongyang for a collective farm east of the city.
Farming, since the inception of man, has been important for us to sustain the fleshy vessel that we call the body.
And while the parents were working in the fields, their children were trotted out for songs and calisthenics for yet another display for our benefit. However, after all this choreography, we had a few candid moments with our government minder, who, having gotten to know us for a few days, opened up and shared with us more than we had ever heard from a North Korean about the realities of living under sanctions that the UN Security Council first imposed in 2006 after North Korea's first nuclear test, isolating its economy almost totally from global markets.
Because of sanctions, if you can't import anything, then you have to make everything domestically. So you have to do all your food, energy, clothes, electronics, everything has to be done in DPRK.
Yeah, that's the main policy of our nation's economic building since 1948.
What are the hardships that you have to go through because of the sanctions?
The major difficulty is lack of electricity.
Have you noticed a change since President Trump, or no?
He strengthened the sanctions on our country rather than Obama administration.
The sanctions are worse?
Yeah, sanctions are worse.
Okay.
I felt angry about the sanctions because aimed our nation's existence and sovereignty. I think U.S.'s proposal to impose sanctions on our country is just that you can't exist.
Right.
So will kill you.
Right. So the purpose of the U.S. sanctions is to make DPRK not exist.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why I'm very angry about the sanctions.
And do a lot of people in DPRK feel the same way, that the sanctions are made to stop the DPRK from existing?
But with so much change on the horizon, we wanted to find out how other people from Pyongyang really feel about the North and the South moving closer together.
So one of the only ways that you can actually get out on the street and talk to people in Pyongyang is to come here, to
the metro. So we want to talk to people about the summit between North and South, and does that affect relations or attitudes here in Pyongyang? Nice to meet you. I wanted to ask you what you thought about the summit between North Korea and South Korea.
이번 계기를 통해서 우리 민심에 이런 부분이 있어요. 이번 계기를 통해서 이제 저 통일의 그날이 꼭 반드시 나타나죠.
And what do you think about the summit that happened between Marshal Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump in Singapore? Do you think that's a good thing for American DPRK relations?
앞으로 우리 세계 정치적인 역사적 사변에서 볼 때 매우 중대한 의미를 가진다고 생각한다.
And do you think that's a good thing that there's new relations between DPRK and the USA?
네, 그렇게 생각합니다.
Thank you. How do you feel about the summit between North Korea and South Korea?
체거령도 나중정원 씨께서 결심하시면 우리 모든 걸 다 할 것입니다. 민족 통일을 중심으로 바랍니다.
Now, at the so-called glorious country mass games, or mass gymnastics, the positive outlook and diplomatic signals continued. So we're here at Mayday Stadium in Pyongyang. They've just done a big show of mass gymnastics. In the past I've been here, it's been a lot more aggressive. There's a lot of ICBM technology on display. But tonight they showed a lot of footage of the summit between the DPRK and the Republic of Korea, which has never been done before. And also they featured English, where they were talking about bilateral relations, and they featured Chinese, which is very rare. It was basically a big message to China and a big message to America that we didn't show any weapons technology. We're talking about friendship and bilateral relations. So it's very, very interesting, the messaging that was sent here tonight in Pyongyang. By the end of our trip, it seemed to me that North Korea had indeed been profoundly changed by the progress made in 2018. But political reality is always much more complicated. So we headed to Seoul, South Korea, a city which remains directly threatened every day by Kim Jong-un's vast military arsenal. As recently as 2017, there were high-level discussions about whether or not to do a preemptive strike against the DPRK. That's how bad things have gotten. Today, we are now demilitarizing the DMZ. There's summits between North and South Korea. In fact, there's summits between America and DPRK, something that would be unthinkable before. So we wanted to come to South Korea, talk to people on the ground, and see what the zeitgeist here in the South is, and if it matches that in the North.
되게 신기했어요. 뭔가 제가 살아가는 동안에는 없을 거라고 생각을 했는데 이게 진짜 현실인가 생각했던 것 같아요. 그런 게 되게 남북 관계의 진전을 보여주는 되게 의미 있는 사진이었다고 생각해서
단순히 포옹한 것 자체는 좀 또 누가 와도 정서적으로 뭉클하고 좋은 장면이긴 하죠. 근데 이제 정치라는 게 그것만일 수는 없는 거잖아요.
Now, while this year has seen rapid progress, the work behind the scenes has been underway for decades. Moon Chung-in, who has long advocated for engagement with the North, is the architect of the current South Korean president's official policy on the issue. President Moon and Kim Jong-un have had 3 summits. Is this the biggest year since hostilities ceased between North and South Korea in the history of the conflict?
I would say so. Really great reversal. We have never expected that kinds of development, and it is truly unprecedented. I was in Pyongyang. We were invited to the gymnastic performance.
오늘 나와 문재인 대통령은 북남 관계 발전과 평화 번영의 여정에서 또 하나의 새로운 이정표로 될 소중한 결실을 만들어냈습니다.
President Moon had a chance to give a talk to the North Korean citizens, and he then said, I made an agreement with Chairman Kim Jong-un.
백두에서 한라까지 아름다운 우리 강산을 영구히 핵무기와 핵 위협이 없는 평화의 터전으로 만들어 후손들에게 물려주자고 확약했습니다.
past, we are not allowed to speak anything about the denuclearization to 150,000 North Korean crowd.
Yeah.
And they welcomed with a roaring applause.
Do you think that denuclearization is actually attainable?
It is unshakable goal of South Korea, United States, Japan, and international community.
I agree, but there's also the argument that you hear in North Korea of, look what happened to Muammar Gaddafi, gave up his weapons of mass destruction, he was ousted, so that there's a bit of fear.
Obviously.
Yeah.
It is natural for North Korea to have such a kind of fear.
Yeah, there's a lot in the press anyways, in America of, we make an agreement to denuclearize, and then what happens is new things are being built or new testing is going on, and we're being duped, or it's happening in secret.
It may not be necessarily a cheating on the part of North Korea. North Korea may take a measure for hedging. If anything goes wrong with the United States, then they should have something to rely on.
Right.
But why these things taking place? It is taking place because of lack of trust.
So the demilitarization of the DMZ is the first step towards having a de facto unification where you have an economic cooperation or a military cooperation.
Absolutely. Once we can build the kind of military confidence between North and South, then we can move into the end of war declaration.
What's the worst case scenario if things turn around?
The worst case scenario would be the return to July and August of 2017, preemptive attacks and all these kinds of things. But there is one qualitative difference. There is a communication channels among leaders.
That are open.
There is some sort of trust built among President Trump, Chairman Kim Jong-un, and President Moon Jae-in. That kind of so-called the new horizon of summit diplomacy will prevent the kind of worst-case scenario on the Korean Peninsula.
There's going to be a high-stakes poker game played on the Korean Peninsula in 2019.
Absolutely.
This entire neighborhood has been leveled. The fire has taken out every house here. And now all of these Chico firefighters and search and rescue personnel are looking for bodies.
We have a list of people that have not been found by their family members. A lot of people don't want closure. So it's extremely important. Doing the job that we do, we're working with fire departments and search and rescue from all over the state.
And what are your methods when you're out there? How do you do it?
You have a particular structure, which is almost everyone in this town, that is burned to the ground. You have so much heat that actually the bone fragments are exactly that. They're fragments. They're very small. So you got to be very precise. That's where the dogs come in really handy.
And so have you discovered any human remains the last couple days?
We have discovered them, yes, unfortunately. I mean, it's sad because when you look at where they're located, I mean, every body, if you think about it, tells a story of what happened. You can see a body could be close to an exit or down a hallway or whatever that location is. You can see their struggle to survive, and it's sad seeing that.
The evacuation area is getting bigger, so I urge people to pay attention. If they are urged to evacuate, please do so.
This is the epicenter of the so-called Camp Fire, the deadliest, most destructive wildfire in the state's history. At least 80 people have died, and nearly 20,000 buildings are destroyed. CAL FIRE led more than 5,000 deployed firefighters on 24-hour shifts, with support from local departments and private contractors across the country.
All right, good morning. Jonathan Pangburn, Fire Behavior Analyst with CAL FIRE Team 4. It has been 211 days since this area last received half an inch of rain. 211 days. Want to make sure we realize it has jumped a 300-foot lake at least 3 times.
Yeah, we're at the spot, probably about a quarter acre, slow rate of spread. There could potentially be a second, so we're going to put this one out and get eyes on the second.
Fires are going later and are burning more intense later on in the year than they used to. They're all kind of becoming, I hate to use the fancy term, the new normal, but something's happening that's a little different.
Those are 1448, Quebec training. Cut it off, down into the drain.
Well, you can hear it, and you can see it.
Oh, shit, yeah.
Yeah, you can see it.
Choppers coming down to the river right here. They're picking up 2,000 to 3,000 gallons of water, and then they fly it right over here where the fire is spreading, dump all the water, come back here and do it all over again. They're basically just racing this fire, trying to put it out. For somebody who's unfamiliar with the history of wildfires in California, and this one specifically, how destructive has this fire been?
Since this is my home, it's a little difficult. This has been the most destructive fire in California's recorded history. During the course of this calendar year, over 1.6 million acres has burned in the state of California. So we'll get a little tired of the records.
Why was this fire so destructive and so deadly?
Keep in mind, we had a drought start way back in 2012. It honestly has not stopped. The embers that were cast by this fire were pushed well out ahead of this fire, and every ember landed and started a new fire. So you had 50 to 60 mile per hour winds pushing this fire right off the get-go. It started out, the first sight on it was 10 acres. Football field lengths in a matter of seconds.
I heard 80 football fields in a minute. It's crazy. You cannot run that.
No, oh no. No, you're not going to make it.
$52,000 people were evacuated from surrounding areas, flooding nearby towns and cities, and hundreds landed in parking lots like this one.
We're walking through the Walmart parking lot right now in Chico. We have domestic refugees here. It's a really kind of strange thing to see in your own state.
Rudy Melashenko is a school bus driver who was finishing his shift when Paradise was evacuated.
It was a bus route from hell in Paradise, is the way I've described it.
North of Highway 70 is mandatory evacuation zone.
This is the very beginning of the fires, okay?
What's so striking about this, it says 9:11 a.m. and it's pitch dark.
It's pitch dark. Everything is so black, I couldn't even tell where I was, and I go this route every day.
Holy smokes, that's right next to me. Oh my gosh.
You're in bumper-to-bumper traffic and the fire's right on the side of the road. Did you think, I don't know, maybe you wouldn't make it?
This one scared me.
Looks like a 100-foot tree on fire right in front of you. Could you feel the heat?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now I'm back at my bus yard finally, and I see that this vehicle's starting to catch fire. And right here are all the gas tanks for the buses. I'm feeling like this is not safe. I got to get out of here. Anyway, I can see the school starting to catch fire and stuff. And I'm sorry. I didn't know what was going to happen then, but
oh no, that's where Bob Carley lives. Oh no.
As the town evacuated, some cars ran out of gas, others were engulfed in flames. So as residents tried to escape on the few roads out of Paradise, they got stuck.
Heavenly Father, please help us. Please help us to be safe.
God. With the fire mostly contained, one of the big questions for these residents now is, how did the fire start? While investigations take months, CAL FIRE is examining electrical equipment operated by the largest utility company in the state, PG&E.
You know, this was someone's home, right? That's what is
lost in all of this is that there was a home and a family and a life here.
John Fisk, who litigated against PG&E for damages in the 2017 wildfires, is already representing residents who are suing the company for the Camp Fire. Do you have any indication of what caused this fire?
We're starting to receive news reports that this fire may involve PG&E equipment. And so right now we're looking at PG&E as a potential defendant, especially considering its track record.
California's largest utility is found guilty in a criminal trial from the San Bruno pipeline explosion in 2010.
PG&E has been ordered to pay citations totaling more than $8 million for safety violations tied to one of the most destructive wildfires in California history.
PG&E power lines are linked to at least 2 of the wine country wildfires.
In the last several years, PG&E has caused several very large-scale fires, going back to the San Bruno explosion, the Butte fire of 2015, the North Bay fires of 2017. It seems like it's almost every year. And so knowing that PG&E is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, we look to see whether or not PG&E is putting those resources towards safety first. We do know that PG&E has reported to the California Public Utilities Commission that there was a problem with one of its lines about 15 minutes prior to the start of the fire. You've potentially got notice and you failed to power down and you failed to fix that equipment. If it turns out that PG&E's equipment is the cause and origin of the fire, it's going to be a large multi-billion-dollar liability. And when you see some of the most destructive fires caused by utilities, it comes to a head in the political system.
Just before the Camp Fire, the state legislature heard arguments over who should pay the billions in damages caused by downed power lines in the 2017 Napa-Sonoma fires. The state utility regulator, Governor Brown, and PG&E argued that because climate change has increased the risk and severity of wildfires, utilities should no longer be held strictly liable and should only be responsible for damages when a fire is caused by their negligence or wrongdoing.
The severity of the danger is only heightened by climate change, with storms of increasing frequency that can topple poles and snap power lines.
And you're arguing that maybe it's not climate change that's causing the risk?
No, the way PG&E has designed its infrastructure causes the spark. Climate change may exacerbate the situation. It's all the more reason why we need to be protective of homeowners and ask these companies to ask themselves, is our system designed and used in a way that reduces that risk?
That's what residents like Terry Wilcox are asking. The day before the fire, PG&E sent out emergency flyers warning residents that they might cut power due to high-risk fire conditions.
This is important notice. The emergency may shut off for safety. That was on our door that afternoon when we came home. And the fire started at 6:30 the next morning. It says, please take steps now to ready for your emergency plan. To protect the public safety, we may need to temporarily turn off electricity in your neighborhood.
So then did they turn off the power?
No. I know how these power lines are, and there's ones that are weak or whatever. Yeah. Once those 2 top lines are 30,000 volts hit together, boom, it blows a transformer, throws sparks. It's like lightning or something. They should have shut off their power.
PG&E declined an interview, but reminded us that the cause of the fire is still under investigation and said they're focused on supporting residents at this time. While they haven't been held responsible, there is a growing distrust of the company among many consumers. But if they are found responsible, the solution isn't as simple as them just coughing up billions of dollars. Michael Wara is a leading expert on climate and energy policy at Stanford University.
We won't know if PG&E is held responsible for this Camp Fire for probably several months. If they are, can they afford it?
If PG&E is responsible for this fire, the company is likely to have to seek bankruptcy protection. Not so much a question anymore of whether PG&E could pay for what happened last year or what happened last week. It's a question of whether investors want to invest money in a company that could generate the same kind of loss next year and the year after and the year after that. We have a situation where the world is creating a context in which the utilities can't make money unless we fix the problem. The drought that occurred over the last decade was something like a 1 in 1,000 year event. So we have dead trees all over the landscape. When a utility line causes a fire and you add climate change on top of that, instead of being a fire that can be managed and put out and contained, it turns into something that very quickly spins out of control. I do think that we need to really be re-examining kind of how the system is designed and operated in a pretty radical way.
What would those improvements be?
Well, imagine a world in which the homes in wildfire country had a solar panel on their roof and a battery in their garage, such that when PG&E felt the slightest desire to turn the power off, it could, and there would be no impact on customers. Part of the dynamic that occurred in Paradise was that PG&E thought about turning off the power, but didn't. I think the idea that we're going to get to some level of perfection that's acceptable using the traditional approaches of like trimming the trees better and inspecting the lines more is just not credible, because the situation we're up against in terms of risk is just too extreme. The consequences for one mistake are too large.
Evacuees are being allowed to go back to Paradise for the first time after the campfire. Many are returning to nothing as flames decimated the entire town.
The state's insurance commissioner says the losses are staggering.
I mean, I just think you're prepared to see something, but you just too many memories. Just growing up in such a beautiful area.
Oh my God.
Watching the kids play here, just about blink of an eye, it's all gone.
I'm trying to get a context. It's hard for me to, because that was the driveway, and we always went in the back. Oh, so that probably led up to the house. So this is probably,
What we've been doing for the last 3 or 4 decades is the population of California has gone from 25 million people to now we're at close to 40 million people. We've put that extra increment of population into places that maybe weren't safe. The home insurers are going to start to feel that they don't want to insure homes in wildfire country. I think the average person is going to have to make some different choices about where they live, and probably not live, in places like Paradise.
Are you going to rebuild?
no. I've never owned a place. So I got to own a place for a year. This place is the loss of the world, I wish you could have been here before, because it was an oasis.